Nigeria's Security Command has undergone another major shakeup. President Olatunbosun appointed a new set of service chiefs, the second major overhaul in just over 2 years. The move comes amid lingering security challenges and recent rumors of instability within the ranks. Today on Standpoint, we examine the timing, the message, and what this reshuffle means for Nigeria's defense strategy. Hello and thanks for joining us. I am Precious Amayu. President Olatunbosun has announced another major shakeup in the country's military leadership, his second in just over 2 years, signaling renewed efforts to strengthen the nation's security architecture. Now, under the new appointments, General Olufemi Oluyede becomes the Chief of Defense Staff, taking over from General Christopher Musa. Major General Waidi Shaibu has been named Chief of Army Staff. Air Vice Marshal S.K. Aneke takes charge as Chief of Air Staff, while Rear Admiral I. Abbas assumes office as Chief of Naval Staff. The Chief of Defense Intelligence, Major General E.A.P. Udiendeye, however, retains his position. This fresh reshuffle comes just 2 weeks after the military dismissed rumors of a failed coup attempt, a coincidence that has sparked a debate about the timing and the possible message behind these latest changes in Nigeria's top defense ranks. The presidency says the move is part of ongoing reforms to boost professionalism and coordination among the armed forces. But observers are watching closely to see what impact this shakeup will have on Nigeria's broader security strategy. Counter-terrorism specialist Olatunbosun Abolarinwa joins me for more on this. Good to have you join us.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Let me say he joins me from our Abuja studio. Just in terms of, what has happened, I want to first ask you, because I know that most of you most of you in the security sector have been watching the polity. Were you shocked, or taken aback by this latest announcement, or were you expecting it?
A change of guard is something that is inevitable, whether the situation is good or not, and is not really shocking or surprise news to us that there's been a change of guards. It has happened in the past. And as long as we still have security challenges and we have brilliant people who can take over from new one to inject new energy, new knowledge, strategy, I think it's something that is very, very inevitable.
And there have been speculations as to why this was done by the president. For some people, look, we've been having security challenges for about 3 different occasions. The president has said, change strategy. That doesn't seem to be happening. But for others, it looks like it's not unconnected to the recent rumors we had in the polity. I just want to get your own thoughts on why you think that the president made this move.
Yeah, there are several issues which I think can prompt the president to take this decision. The first one is that we are getting an international attention about genocide in Nigeria, and it's not really putting the government in a good light. Locally, too, we have recently the terrorists overrunning some military settlements. We cannot say that without mentioning that the military, too, have had series of scores up till the last 48 to 72 hours. So when you look at all these, the international pressure, the international image, what is happening in the Middle East, in Jos, in Plateau State, in the Benue State, and the fact that the Borno State governor and other Northeast State governor and North Central governor are having serious issues with what we call bandits and Boko Haram, I think a good government will go back to their drawing table to try and see if there is any other person who can do things better. And I think that's what the president has done this time around.
And I mentioned earlier that on 3 different occasions, and those are the ones I can remember, the president had mentioned to the chief of defense staff and all the service chiefs, look, change strategy so we can end, especially when it was a very difficult time in Benue and Plateau State. But it didn't seem like anything was happening. And I just want to ask you if you think that was a capacity problem or if it was just, outright flouting of directive.
Well, I really don't have any details of that, but being an expert in this field, studying what has been happening, I wouldn't want to say that the previous strategy we have in place is working. I wouldn't put the blame on the servicemen, neither will I put the blame on the government. But whatever it is that has been put in place in the past is obviously not working if we are having loss of lives and properties the way we are having it up to recent time. And I think, like I said, if that be the case, there is need for the government of the day to look inward and see whether change of guards, change of pattern can bring in new energy, new knowledge into the theaters and see whether there can be a change of equation in this problem that is enveloping us as a country.
But Mr. Abolarinwa, did it feel like they had a grasp of what was the security challenges, especially when it comes to the ability to consolidate on the gains made? We've seen gains in some states, and then months later, we will see renewed attacks which were worse than the ones that were there before. And I'm wondering, was that an inability to sustain those attacks, those gains on the part of the military hierarchy?
Well, if the problem is mounting every day, I wouldn't want to agree or suggest that they have a grip of what is going on. They don't have a grip of the situation. There is something that is still bypassing them. There's something that is still overwhelming them. And until we get that right and we see a reduction in the attack, a reduction in the incidence of insurgency, a reduction in the loss of lives and property, in general knowledge where a section of the country is not claiming genocide. I think that's the only time we can now come to say, okay, everything is okay. You mentioned about gain made in the past. If with the current situation of things, I really don't think that...
Mr. Abolarinwa, please just allow me put you on hold. We need to make this announcement that we're crossing over to Anambra State to bring you the live broadcast of a campaign rally by APGA. That would be what is showing on the screen now, but don't forget to scan the QR code on the screen just so you can continue to watch Standpoint and other programs, especially on the platform Biscay Beach channel 524 and YouTube as well. Mr. Abolarinwa, you were giving your thoughts on whether you think they had a grasp on the extent of the security challenges that we had in the country or that we have in the country.
Yes, I wouldn't want to agree with that they've got a grasp of it. I think there's still more that needs to be done. I think there's need for a change of strategy, whatever strategy we have in place all the way from NSA down to all the service chiefs. I think there is still need for more work to be done on the table. There's need for a change of strategy. There is need for fresh mind and new energy to come in to change the equation of how things is currently going, which is not supposed to be that way. So in view of that, I will want to agree with whoever that says that the military or the security agencies have not gotten a grasp of the security situation in the country for good.
And you talked about fresh minds and energy and strategy. But one of the things we noted or we have seen is that the former chief of army staff has now he was retained, and then not just retained, he was promoted to become the chief of defense staff. I'm wondering what you make of that, because a lot of people have thought, look, if it's a strategy problem, maybe all of them should go, and then have new minds and fresh minds.
All right, strategies come hand in hand, and myself and yourself, we are out here. There are intelligence available to the presidency which guide the decision they have made. It's another thing entirely, and I don't think we all have access to that. But if you ask me to rate the former chief of army staff who has now been promoted to become the chief of defense staff, without going into details, I think his coming in has really brought in some action less than talks. And the result of that action is something that we have been seeing in the last 5 to 6 days, although it is not really, it's not devoid of some infractions in the Northeast. But I want to believe that maybe the presidency felt that based on what he has done as a chief of army staff, he may well do more and do better as a chief of defense staff. And that's something we're all waiting and watching to see, whether the change of baton in the chief of defense staff desk is really going to change the equation of things on the battlefield. And
I will come back to, because I know that there is a lot ahead of him, that's General Oluyede to do. But I wanted to go back to the terms and the harmonized terms and conditions of office for service chiefs. They are actually supposed to stay in office for 2 years, but that's at the discretion of the president to extend or not to extend. But most times what we see is an extension. Even with this administration, we saw, I think, about 6 months extra, extension for them. But I'm wondering the implication of that on our security architecture if we continue to extend and not necessarily say, okay, it's 2 years, you're done, leave.
Sorry, I didn't get that correctly. There's this glitch in my hearing aid. Can you come again on that, please?
So I was talking about the harmonized terms and conditions of service for service chiefs. They are meant to stay, in that office for about 2 years, but subject to the discretion of whoever the president is at that time. But what we've seen, especially in the Buhari administration, was, an outright extension. And I'm wondering the implication of those kind of extensions on our security architecture.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not really a fan of extensions. If you serve your term according to the policy of the field where you are working, you should go, because extension, whichever way we look at it, have a way of having whether a positive impact or a negative impact on the people that are still in service. So now, if there is an extension of somebody that is supposed to have served for 35 years or has reached the statutory age of 60 where it's supposed to step down for other people to come up, unfortunately, you will see a lot of people being forced to retire in order to sustain the extension, be it a policy or choice or discretion of the president. So I personally don't think that the extension of a thing is is going to be breathing bad blood among those that are supposed to have their turn, and those that are still supposed to be in service being forced to retire. So that's one thing we really want any administration to really try and see how we can manage the Nigeria civil service, the Nigeria military and paramilitary environment to ensure that the civil service rule that says you should go when your time is due is put in place and is adhered to. That's my position on that.
And you think that because you mentioned that so that those who are there can have their turn, you think that right now, and this is more of a morale booster for those who are there, now believing that too, someday they too will have their turn?
No, I wouldn't say that. That's not where I stand. With the current situation of things, like I said earlier on, people are still dying in villages. Some section of the country and all over the world are insinuating that there is a genocide in Nigeria. When that happens, there is need for the government to look inward and ensure that something is done. They must be seen to be doing something to change that narrative and that equation. And I think that's exactly what has happened this time. Regardless of whether elongation of tenure or extension of tenure, there is need to be a shake-up in the security hemisphere of the country to ensure that the right people who can get the job done are in place. And that's my position.
I was speaking more of the ripple effect that this will have on the military, but we will come back and just touch on that briefly before we move on to other issues. We'll take a break now, and when we return, the Standpoint will continue in just a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us, everyone. You're watching Standpoint, and we're discussing the major shakeup in the military hierarchy by the president, where some of the service chiefs have been let go, but the chief of army staff has been retained, and he's now the chief of Defense Staff. We've been speaking with a counter-terrorism expert, Olatunbosun Abolarinwa, who is joining us from Abuja studio. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you.
All right, so just before I move on to the expectations that or what we should be expecting from the new Chief of Defense Staff, I was clarifying that what I actually mean is what the military shake-up, the ripple effect it will have on the military itself. Is it a moral booster? Do you think it is a moral booster for them?
Yes, like I said, there's going to be a new energy, new pack of knowledge, a new set of people to do things who are probably able to do things a little bit more differently in the area of being proactive rather than being reactive to situation. I'm not saying this was not there before, but we can do better if the situation still persists. So I will agree with you on that it could be a moral boost for the military across board if these people decide to do things a little bit more differently.
Let's talk about the expectations from the new Chief of Defense Staff across the country, especially in the North. We've seen, yes, some gains have been made, but sometimes, as you're rejoicing over those gains, there are fresh attacks. And we've seen some even in Borno State where even the governor, like you mentioned earlier, had to speak out. And we saw a meeting, from the northern governors at some point too over insecurity in that region. I want to get your, just what you think at the task ahead of the new Chief of Defense Staff.
Well, the first thing they need to realize is that the issue of banditry seems to be spreading like wildfire across the country. It's no longer limited to a particular region. The Southwest is now being approached. North Central is now being encircled. And I think that a lot needs to be done by the new Chief of Defense Staff. The former Chief of Defense Staff was actually harmonizing the issue of enabling or encouraging or advising people to rise up and defend themselves. The Director General of the State Security also said same thing, that people should defend themselves. Well, people will not defend themselves with sticks and brooms and cutlass. I think there is need for the new Chief of Defense Staff to try and harmonize relationship with the Nigerian Police Force and other paramilitary agencies to make sure that the issue of counter-insurgency, counter-banditry, counter-terrorism initiative spread across board and goes into the villages. They shouldn't focus on one particular place. That is an expectation. Another expectation is the issue of sensitizing the populace in the area of counter-terrorism, which is not the duty of security agencies alone. I've not seen any effort in that area. I think the idea of counter-terrorism that has been pushed forward for the past 15 years has been focusing more on kinetic, which I think there is need for change of approach. We should try and look for something in the area of orientational change, communication and information sharing, and cooperation, more cooperation among the sister agencies to make sure that this problem is not enveloping us completely. So those are some of the expectations. Then we want to see less people dying. The more people are dying and we are having mass grave in the Middle Belt and other parts of the country, we have mosques being invaded, we have more kidnapping, more rescue of people. We need to change whatever it is that the strategy we have adopted that is not helping, and try and come to the table and redesign. Maybe, just maybe, the National Security Advisor's strategy that is currently in place is not working. Probably, we may have to review that if we want to be proactive. So those are some of the expectations I have of the new set of people that are taking the mantle of leadership in the military hemisphere.
In his statement, the president mentioned his expectations. One of them was professionalism, but he also used the word, comrade. And people have interpreted that to mean the disparity between the commissioned and non-commissioned officers of the military, and that there's a disparity in their welfare. And perhaps, it's time to look at that to ensure that, of course, in ranks, commissioner officers are higher, but that it shouldn't be that wide a gap, to ensure that at the bottom, because those are the people who people feel really do the work at the front lines, and that they are also, they ensure that their welfare package is at least good to take home. And I want to get your reaction to that as well.
Well, it's a good one. If they can do that, it's going to help a lot. One thing about ensuring the welfare of the personnel across board, whether high or low, is at top notch, is that there is need for constant morale boosting of all the people that are on the front line, all the people that are losing their life while serving this country. So a mention of that is not good enough. I think the federal government should try and annex whatever opportunity that is available to ensure that the welfare of officers, not only in the military, even in the paramilitary, in the police, in the army, in the air force, in the navy, Nigerian civil defense, even the current forest guards that we have just inaugurated that are going into place, to ensure that the issue of welfare is top-notch, so that those men will not be compromising in the area of their duty.
Well, finally, let me just ask you, as we begin to wind down, another area people talk about is intelligence and how we manage intelligence in the country. What are your expectations from the Chief of Defense Staff?
Well, we have a National Intelligence Agency, and to be honest with you, if I want to be very, very sincere with you, I really don't think they are doing enough, or maybe we've not had the person that can consolidate the area of intelligence gathering, dissemination for a gain and continuation of business. You see, anybody that is coming into the seat of the Chief of Defense Staff really needs to look at that, because if there is no intelligence or proper use of intelligence, or a very poor intelligence bank, it means that we're just going to be going around in circle, like going merry-go-round. We need to do something about that, just as we want to do something about the welfare of the staff, because the intelligence is the tool that anybody we are putting out there to work needs to work. We are in the 21st century, where every security endeavor should be intelligence-led, not just us going there and doing the do's as usual. We should try and ensure the new Chief of Defense Staff should work with the National Intelligence Agency, and the National Intelligence Agency should as well work with every other intelligence wing of other military and paramilitary agency to make sure that the intelligence gathering and dissemination is top-notch. That is the only way by which the problem facing us can be surmounted and nipped in the bud.
All right, thank you so much for your time. We're following through, and we'll see how the momentum that this new Chief of Defense Staff will bring into the military. Thank you, Abolarinwa Olatunbosun, who is a counter-terrorism specialist.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, that's Standpoint this hour. Thank you so much for watching. But remember, you can watch the repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. I am Precious Amayo.